Hi, I'm Dr. Mary Shackleton, naturopathic doctor, and I'm here today with Misty Krawczyk, who is an environmental specialist and an electromagnetic radiation consultant. I'm thrilled to be here with Misty because one of the things that I think is underreported and underrated is the topic of electromagnetic radiation. And it's something that we don't see, most of us don't feel it, but it is becoming more and more prevalent in our world, in our schools, in our homes, and in our workplaces. EMFs are invisible lines of force created whenever electricity is generated or used. EMFs are produced by power lines, electrical wiring, and electric equipment and appliances. So I met Misty and was really impressed with her background. I don't know anybody with the training that she has. I wondered how many of my patients are struggling with symptoms related to their radiation exposure and they don't know it. So I'm so excited that you're here today to help me understand and to help us understand what we're being exposed to and what we can do about it.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Can you talk a little bit about your background and how you came to the certifications and education that you've just finished?
Sure. So I think one of the definitive signs for me was recognizing that when I used my cell phone, I would start getting a rash on my face and turn red. And so it was a pretty immediate, acute reaction at that point that I recognized. And so from there, I just started doing my own research and came across the International Institute for Building Biology, which is where I got my training. It's a two-year study or course or certification where I became an electromagnetic radiation specialist. We go in and we study and learn about the electromagnetic radiation, the different frequencies across the electromagnetic spectrum, the different health effects that they have, and how to go out and measure them in people's homes, workplaces, schools, so that you can help people understand the symptoms and the health impacts. And not everybody is going to have symptoms, just like if somebody is smoking, somebody can smoke for 30 years and never have one side effect or get lung cancer, and then somebody else might smoke for 5 years, and their genetic susceptibilities and other environmental factors that they're exposed to can cause them to manifest the disease in different ways and get lung cancer or different things. So electromagnetic radiation is similar in that it impacts everybody differently. And so even if you might not be outwardly showing symptoms, there are studies that have proven that it has effects on a cellular biologic level, that it impacts everybody across the board.
It makes sense because across every cell membrane there's an electrical potential. And I would imagine that that is a very sensitive frequency to radiation.
It's very sensitive, and so yes, our bodies are electromagnetic. That's how they communicate, and each system within your body, each organ system has its own frequency. And so when you start exposing yourself to a whole slew of frequencies across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, everything from very low frequency or extremely low frequency, like the wiring in your walls, to high frequency stuff like wireless radiation, cell phone towers, your cell phone, wireless routers, it starts interfering with your body's own ability to communicate with itself.
Mm-hmm. Right, and so just like, your example of smoking is a good one, because I would imagine that a certain number of my patients are sensitive and we don't know it, and it's part of their picture, and some people are never going to feel it at all. Sure. Which is probably why it's hard to legitimize this in the medical world, because it's hard to prove. It's probably really hard to prove.
It's hard to prove. It's getting, I think, easier as the studies come out. We have never, this has happened so quickly, the proliferation of wireless technology everywhere. It's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. Businesses, schools, you can't go to the grocery store. Even cities are broadcasting what's called WiMAX, which is like free wireless for everyone. Wow. It's actually here in Boulder, down by the Civic Center area. So It's everywhere, and it's happened so fast in the blink of an eye, and we haven't had time to study. It's basically we're part of a live, real-time experiment, and we haven't had one generation from cradle to grave that has had full exposure yet, and so we're studying. Right. We're studying as it goes along, but. Radio frequency radiation is actually classified. It was in 2011 by the World Health Organization as a Class 2B carcinogen. So it actually is. It's a carcinogen.
Wow.
So,
I'm pretty sure that our appetite for technology is driving a lot of this wireless invention. And in fact, the iPhone 7 just came out this week, and the headphones are now wireless. So the phone is communicating with the earbuds without a wire. So there's the radiation from the phone and the radiation from the earbuds, and that's probably double what was there before. So I think we have to know where to draw the line in order to help reduce our exposure.
Sure. I mean, I would put it as probably a technology addiction. Mm-hmm. Our society is addicted to technology, checking their phone all the time, or constantly just wanting to be in contact with other people via technology. And so, yeah, certainly the demand is driving the progress in technology, but there are things that the cell phone companies, the manufacturers of the wireless devices, they can lower the radiation. Oh. It's a choice. There's actually, you can, when you're looking to purchase a cell phone, there's the manufacturers are required to report something called the SAR rating, which is specific absorption rate, which is how much radiation your cell phone is transmitting or emitting. And so you can just do a quick Google of SAR levels for cell phones, and it'll bring you a list, and you can be educated and choose based on that if that's something that's important to you and you're looking to reduce your wireless exposure. Another thing you can do is your cell phone actually has 3 transmitters on at all times if you choose for them to be on: cellular data, mm-hmm. Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi. Uh-huh. So you can go through and individually control all of those different transmitters. If you're in an area where there isn't Wi-Fi and you want to turn that off, that's one less transmitter. I would personally recommend, if you're in your car driving, you turn all of them off, mm-hmm. Because you're in a metal cage basically, and the radiation, it's just bouncing all over back and forth. And right. Creating continuous exposure. So
that's a good visual.
Yeah, so putting it on airplane mode is tremendously helpful. And then it's not transmitting, and turning it on when you need it. Some people won't do that, but if you want to stay in constant contact, if you're not using Bluetooth, turn that transmitter off. That's one less exposure that you're going to have. So.
Oh, that's a super helpful tip. So not everybody is sensitive, but everybody's being exposed. What are some of the symptoms that you see commonly related to this exposure?
Sure. So it can look like headaches, skin rashes, cognition problems, or feeling like spacey, somewhat disoriented, neurological tingling, memory issues, hormone imbalance.
Oh, great.
Yes. So, I mean, it's kind of the bulk of the symptoms can be attributed to a number of different, right. Maladies that could potentially be affecting you. And that's why it's so difficult to tease out what's going on. I guess a good way to go about it and to approach it is to start turning things off. Turn your wireless router off at night. Don't sleep with your cell phone beside your bed.
That's a good one.
And see how you sleep. Sleep problems is huge. That's probably one of the single most talked about issues that people have, is they can't sleep. And if they start turning things off around their bed, in their house, you're not using your wireless network at night when you're sleeping, so turn it off.
So actually turn your router off before you go to bed.
Yep.
That's a great tip.
During the daytime, your body can withstand more exposure, theoretically speaking, because you're awake. At nighttime, the goal is to try to create a sleeping sanctuary because that's when your body repairs itself. And if you give your body the opportunity to repair itself at night by not having all of these exposures when it's trying to do that job, your body is stronger during the day. So you can handle a lot more during the day than you can when you're sleeping at night, when your body lets down its guard and it's really trying to do repair work. If it's constantly being bombarded by all of these different frequencies that are interfering with its ability to do its job and to communicate with itself, it's not in the optimal position to repair itself.
Wow, that's a great tip, because sleep disorders are enormous, and people are diagnosed with sleep apnea or anxiety and depression when actually it could be as simple as exposure to electromagnetic radiation.
Absolutely.
What are some other tools? You've given two really great examples. What are some other things that people can do on a daily basis to reduce their exposure?
Another huge one is if you're in an office where you have control over your technology, your computer, is to actually wire it. Instead of using a wireless computer and wireless routers, is to have wired technology. That's a huge one, because a lot of people are sitting in front of their computer for eight hours a day, and you're in such close proximity to it that wiring it, you can do all the same things, get online and everything, but you're using it in a safe way. Same for schools, and this is probably one of the biggest areas that I would like to help educate people on, is children in schools, because they're the most tremendously impacted, because their bodies are still growing and trying to develop. Cells are dividing, and all the biological effects that we've spoken about are even more impactful on children.
Right.
And so when you go into a school that has wireless routers, and then you have 20 to 30 desks with students using a Chromebook or an iPad or whatever it might be, that radiation exposure is multiplied exponentially.
Right.
And it's 24 hours a day, so they go to school and they have the wireless routers at school and their iPad or their Chromebook or their laptop. Then they go home and there's a wireless router at home. They have their cell phone. They go to the grocery store. It's at the grocery store, free Wi-Fi. So, I mean, even cars are a huge exposure too, if people are driving for their job, or even just around town or long trips or whatever it might be, because there's Bluetooth in cars. So there's also, and they're integrating other wireless transmitters into cars as well, so you can get online and do all of those sorts of things. So even cars are huge in terms of your amount of exposure. And again, you're inside of this metal box that the signals are just reverberating all around and continuously exposing you. So, it's important also when you're looking for a car to maybe, if this is something that you're interested in, minimizing your exposures, is to make sure you can turn those transmitters off. Some cars you can, some you can't. And then again, at schools, we're performing a science experiment on our kids, and it's better to use a precautionary principle and wire technology until we know the level of safety of wireless before we proliferate it everywhere.
Right. It's a huge concern of mine, because we really don't know. And in other countries, you have to prove that things are safe before you can use them. And here in the United States, we use them and then we have to prove their safety. Whereas technology is being used around the world almost overnight in some cases. And it would be fascinating to study cultures where they don't have wireless, and if we could study the health effects of those people versus what we're exposed to.
That's a great point. Different countries around the world have taken different stances on wireless radiation or RF radiation, and France actually is probably the most advanced. In last year, they passed a law that banned Wi-Fi in childcare centers with children 3 years of age and under. So you cannot have wireless in those environments. And then also in primary schools, they put a law in place where the administrators are supposed to unplug the wireless technology unless it's actively being used.
So can you tell me a little bit about what happens in the United States versus what's happening in other countries?
Sure. So the United States uses an exposure level or guideline that's extremely outdated. It's based on thermal heating. So there are a great number of biological effects that happens before your cells are actually heating up and cooking. The United States has not updated their regulations or their guidelines for exposure to include other biological impacts, and other countries in the world have updated theirs. And so it's in process right now, but it's definitely something that needs to happen, because the type of radiation, the sheer amount, it's like 1 billion times greater than what it was 20 years ago.
Wow.
with the proliferation of wireless everywhere. And so our exposure now, because a lot of people argue, or the people who think that there are no effects from wireless radiation, they say, well, we've always been exposed to radiation. There's cosmic radiation. The Earth actually has its own frequency and radiation. And so they say that we've been exposed to this our entire lives. Humans evolved with radiation, and so there's no impact. It's fine for our health. But the frequency, the amount that we're exposed to, like I said, is over 1 billion times greater than what it has been. And that's just been in the blink of an eye, snap of a finger overnight.
Oh my gosh.
But it's proliferated. And so
we should
we
be concerned.
Need to update our standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know sometimes my cell phone gets really hot. What is it doing? And then another question is, I think I'm doing the right thing by putting my headset in and not having my phone near my head. So can you speak to those two things?
Sure. So when your cell phone is heating up, so if you actually, I know most people don't read the manual, the guidelines, the warnings are actually warnings that come with your cell phone when you purchase it, that you are supposed to hold your cell phone an inch away from your head, because the radiation, what you feel, the heat, is actually the radiation that's beginning to heat up your cells. That's the thermal effect, and that's what our standards are based on.
And I'm pretty sure everybody that's watching this does that. They all I always see people holding their cell phone inches away from their head.
Yes, it's a very productive conversation.
Right.
In regards to usage, or a safer way to use your cell phone, many people think that putting earbuds in is a safer way to talk on your cell phone. And the answer to that is yes and no. It can be. It depends. There are a few different factors and usages that it all depends. So if you put your earbuds in, some people will then put their cell phone in their pocket. Some women put it in their bra. And there is no skeletal protection. It's going directly into your soft tissues. Whereas on your head, you have your skull to protect your brain to a certain extent. But when you're putting your cell phone, in your pocket next to soft tissues, it has easier access at penetrating your body at that point. And then also in regards to the headset, so when you put your earbuds into your ears, you're actually putting, although you're not putting your phone directly there, there's currents and radiation that can travel through the wire of your headset into your earbuds, and you're actually putting that closer to your brain by putting it in your ears, putting the earbuds in your ears. So
I thought I was doing the right thing.
It's difficult, but there is something that you can do to protect yourself, which is to buy an air tube headset, which basically just has a small space in the wiring where it's just air. It's a small piece of tube with air in it that still allows for the sound to travel through your earbuds so you can still hear the conversation and have the conversation, but the electromagnetics don't continue up the wire and into your head. They stop with the air.
That is a great tip, and I'm pretty sure everybody's going to want to know what they can do to reduce their exposure. What are your suggestions, some simple things that people can do?
Try to create yourself a sleep sanctuary and minimize your exposures when you're sleeping. So at night, turn off your Wi-Fi router, turn off your cell phone, or put it on airplane mode. If you use it as your alarm clock, if you put it on airplane mode, you can still do that. So it's when your body is trying to recover at night, I think creating a sleep sanctuary and allowing your body to do so is really the most critical step, by just turning things off.
And most people can do that based on what you've just told them. So I think that's super helpful. Well, I want to thank Misty for being here today. I have learned a tremendous amount, and stay tuned for more information, as I think that this will be a topic that I'm going to cover in greater and greater detail. For more information, go to maryshackleton.com or to connect with Misty, you can go to habitatsinharmony.com. So thank you so much for being here and sharing all that you know.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.